The story behind Cowgirl Creamery is pretty legendary. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but to refresh your memory, in 1976, two friends, Sue Conley and Peggy Smith, decided to road trip their baby blue van to San Francisco from back east. One thing led to another. They had long careers at Chez Panisse and Betty's Ocean View Diner. Then they opened Tamales Bay Foods in Point Reyes, created to help West Marin farms and dairies get their products into the hands of chefs. From that start, and with milk from neighboring Straus Family Creamery, they began making their award-winning, life-changing, taste-affirming cheeses. 2 decades, dozens of awards, 2 creameries, 4 retail stores, and 2,000 tons of cheese later, it's safe to say they've earned their 10-gallon hats. So, oh, thank you. I could be here all night. So Sue says we're simply trying to make delicious cheeses that reflect the unique quality of the milk that we use. And that milk comes from Straus Family Creamery. It only seemed right to have Albert Straus join them on stage. Albert is the president of Straus Family Creamery, which is the first certified organic dairy west of the Mississippi and the first 100% certified organic creamery in the US. He's the oldest son of Bill and Ellen Straus, who began their family dairy farm in the early 40s in Marshall on Tamales Bay and was raised on that ranch. Sue, Peggy, and Albert are joined by Margo True, food editor at Sunset Magazine and a lifelong cheese lover, who will moderate the conversation. So please join me to welcome Sue Conley, Peggy Smith, Albert Straus, and Margo True.
Well, thank you, Jordan. That was great to hear and beautifully written, I have to say. When I was thinking about tonight's event, I remembered a story that R.W. Apple, Johnny Apple, wrote for the New York Times back in 2001, and it was called A New Normandy North of the Golden Gate. And he described trying 8 Marin and Sonoma cheeses at Gary Danko restaurant here in the city, and he said, "We tasted, we talked, we surrendered." No inner voice whispered, "Yes, but," we felt no longing whatsoever for the great cheeses of far-off Europe. And the great thing is, it's only gotten better since he wrote that story. Some of our country's best cheeses come from this new Normandy, and it has more cheesemakers per capita than anywhere else in the West. And all of that has a lot to do with these 3 people on the stage with me tonight. And the 3 of them are going to talk about how and why Marin and Sonoma has become such an important leader in artisan cheesemaking in this country. So the first question is for Sue. In your new book that you wrote together with Peggy, you say that for every person who aims to make delicious cheese, it all begins with milk and the dairy farmer. And obviously that for you, that beginning was Albert's milk. And I wondered if you could tell us the story of how you first met the Straus family and what inspired you.
Well, I met Ellen Straus first, Albert's mother, who co-founded Marin Agricultural Land Trust. I had read about her, but she showed up at my house in Point Reyes. I had been living there for about a year, and Ellen showed up with a candidate who was running for supervisor of the county, and well, 2 hours later, they left, because I just fell in love with Ellen, and we started scheming right away. And it was really her and her movement to preserve agricultural land that made me want to kind of join that community. And then I met Albert, who had this crazy idea to transition the farm to organic. Ellen was thrilled with that. I mean, she thought that was the greatest idea. And that's when I sold my shares in Betty's Diner and joined Albert's project, helping to bring the milk to market.
Yeah, that's great. And didn't Ellen also kind of guide you toward the eventual name for your creamery?
She did. And she also helped me not be afraid to make cheese, because she said every farm woman in Europe makes cheese. It's no big deal. So we made it in her kitchen, and then she came down and helped me develop the recipes for the fresh cheeses. But when Peggy and I were trying to figure out what we're going to name this cheese, we were looking into the new rehabbed barn, and 2 women rode up on horses and hitched their horses to the bike rack in front of the bank. And she said, "Sue, this is the Wild West, you know." And I said, "So we must be cowgirls, and this must be the Cowgirl Creamery." And that's how the name came to be.
That's a great story. Well, and Albert, I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about your mother and how she got involved in this lifelong project of hers to save farmland.
Right. My parents were both city slickers. My mother came from Amsterdam. My father came from Hamburg. And as refugees, they fled Nazi Europe and ended up, well, they met in New York, but they came, my father started the farm in 1941, and they married in 1950, but there was always a struggle to keep the farm viable, keep it in agriculture, keep dairy farming viable in our community. And so they worked very hard all their lives to keep the communication going between farmers, environmentalists, governmental agencies, and trying to work towards keeping the agricultural land open and viable. And so when they formed a lot of environmental organizations. They were founded EAC, the Environmental Action Committee of West Marin. They're integral. They helped start Marin. Conservation League. And so there was a lot of different groups that both my parents were very active in. Excuse me. And then, they came up, my mother and Phyllis Faber, her friend, came up with the idea of the land trust that was the first agricultural land trust in the nation, to keep the land, before that, there was A60 zoning that happened in the early 70s, which was 1 house per 60 acres for agricultural land, but that could be overturned by the Board of Supervisors. So they wanted to make it something more permanent. So this way they could keep agricultural land in agriculture in perpetuity.
Because there was a steady attrition of dairy farms nationwide, right? And that was certainly the case in Marin and Sonoma, too.
Yeah, Marin Sonoma County had 222 dairies in 1976, and now today there's 85 left.
Wow.
And so it's been a steep decline in farming, and that was the history of it. So we originally started, my mother was very, very, very strong and very active in trying to preserve agricultural land.
And when was MALT then formed?
MALT was formed in 1980.
In 1980.
And, yes.
Okay. Yeah, and it's obvious to you guys sitting here that made your work at Cowgirl also possible, helped create this milk shed that you talk about in your book. And I wondered if you could, Sue, if you could define that term, milk shed. It might not be a term that's so familiar to everybody.
Well, it's the place where a region gets its milk. So what's been happening in the United States is that dairies are consolidating, and the dairies in this part of the world move to the Central Valley. They become much bigger, and farmers think by adding a cow or 10 cows or 100 cows, they could finally make a profit. So our milk shed has stabilized in that the families are staying on the farm, and they're certifying organic or making cheese, and that's really helped all of us have access to this delicious local milk.
And you were saying earlier, when we were backstage there, that your travels through France and Italy and England too kind of gave you some ideas for your business model and how to operate within this milk shed. And I wondered if y'all could talk about that a little bit. Maybe Peggy start with that.
Sure. The places that we went to in England and France mostly were small. They worked around small producers, and we went to two places in particular. We went to Niljar Dairy, which is in London, and we also went to Jean de Los, which is in Bordeaux. And they both had a very similar model where they'd work with a lot of small producers within a given radius of where they were. But they worked with people that, in Niljar, they worked with people that were making traditional style cheeses. They made the traditional style cheddars, you know, those beautiful 50-pound wheels that are wrapped in linen, or Lancashire cheeses, things that were beginning to disappear because people were turning to more commodity-type cheeses. And so Randolph really made a point of seeking out these people that were still making these small production cheeses and bringing them to the city and educating people on the herds that the milk came from and what the rennet was that they used, if they used like a thistle rennet or something like that. So they helped preserve the traditional style cheese making. They made their own cheeses. They made their fresh cheeses, and then they also distributed within a given area close to where they operated. And those models seemed like they could really work well for us. And when Albert and Jean transitioned their farm to organic, Sue thought it would be a really good opportunity for us to use that organic milk and really make some fresh cheese that represented the milk and didn't try and monkey around with it too much, but really was a new way to bring it to market to showcase that. Was I just rambling there?
Yeah, no, that's, well, and you know, your business is so collaborative, and I've always found it admirable that you also kind of encourage other young cheesemakers, or not necessarily young cheesemakers themselves, but their businesses, and foster that growth too, to kind of spread the word about good cheese in the area.
That is something we learned in England and France. Both of the cheese shops that we modeled our company after never had an exclusive control over a cheesemaker's cheese. It was like they wanted to support the whole region, the whole milk shed, because, as you know, they've identified the appellation. You know, this is where we make Comté, this is where we make soft goat cheeses, and it has tradition in that's dependent on geography and humidity and climate and flora of the place. So, you know, that was just a huge eye-opener for us, that we could develop something like that in our own place where we have beautiful milk. You know, it's all about the milk. It's about the health of the animals, the beautiful pasture. So we realized we had that in our own place.
Was anybody else doing that at the time? I mean, what was the backdrop of cheesemaking like when you started doing this?
I think there were, it was and still is very collaborative with the small cheesemakers. We get lots of people calling us. We called lots of people when we were starting out. So that does still happen. And
it was happening in other parts of the country at the same time. It happened with the hippies moving to the countryside in the 70s, the Back to the Land movement, lots of goat farmers. There were still some traditional cheddar makers in New England. And, you know, it was the point where all these people came together, the New Age thinkers and the traditional farmers, that things can really move. And we're lucky because our farms are so close to the city that they are open-minded, big thinking people. Now Albert's gonna contradict that as far as our community goes. But today,
Yeah.
we have, because it wasn't easy in the beginning when he started,
No.
but we now have 30 cheesemakers in Marin and Sonoma County, and most of these are on-farm productions, farmstead, and it's that next generation coming back. I just got a call from a farmer who said, my second son's coming back, and I want to add more cows and think of another thing that we can make, right? So it's a much different, optimistic, hopeful environment that we're working in now. But Albert, you should tell them what it was
when I
like to have
started?
the first organic dairy.
20 years ago.
Well, as my animal nutritionist said this other night, we're now 20 years, had our 20-year anniversary of our creamery this month, and thank you. So our nutritionist said that when I started, he's been our dairy nutritionist for 30 years, and he said when I started, the community, which is mostly Republican, conservative, Catholics, saw that a liberal, Democratic, and Jewish family was doing something different. It was
They were
they thought it was
suspicious.
suspicious,
Because
and
they were suspicious.
Yeah.
it's a nice way of saying it. They thought it was nuts, but now that close to 75% of the dairies are now certified organic in Marin Sonoma County, and so we're no longer a niche market. We are the way to the future.
Well, and you had quite a lot to do with that too, especially in the beginning, helping other families change their practices. And can you talk a little bit about how you helped that shift?
Well, I think as the market's grown and as we diversified into different products, from glass bottle, cream top glass bottle milk, butter, yogurt, ice cream, sour cream, Greek yogurt, we needed more and more milk, and so our demand went up. We brought on we have now 8 dairies supplying us, 7 families. We're about to bring on another dairy in Marin County, and it was a learning process for them. It was a big risk for these farmers to transition because they didn't know how secure the market was. So a few of them took the leap. The Straus family took a leap in 1996, became the second organic dairy in California, and they've helped mentor and lead and show other farmers as well, with my help as well as their help. But from the beginning, helping write the regulations. It was a new law in California. Organic dairy farming was new in California. There was no one else doing it, so I had to help the certifiers write the regulations that would meet the state and federal standards, proposed federal standards, and look at what types of farming practices actually worked and what didn't work, how to modify our practices to meet the intent of the law and what consumers wanted, and also make it a farming system that was sustainable, a pricing system that was sustainable. We meet every quarter with our farms to talk about volume and prices. So I'm a farmer. I know the challenges they have. The drought's a huge challenge, and so I'm on the phone almost every day, and we're meeting with them every 2 weeks. We bring them their milk check and talk to them about their challenges, and then every quarter we all get together. So it's very important to have a very collaborative relationship with them that's mutually beneficial.
Yeah. Well, going back to your early days with Cowgirl and getting to know Albert's family, what were some of the things that you learned from Ellen and Albert about milk and cheese making? And because you were really pretty intertwined, it sounds like, from what you say in the book in those early days. And
Well, yeah, we didn't know anything, about farming or animals, so we learned a lot. I mean, had never thought, oh my gosh, yeah, of course the cow has to have a calf to produce milk. I never thought about that. So that's kind of where we were starting. And
Well, that's why we don't have cows.
we don't have cows. But we do pay attention to what, Albert tells us what they're eating, when they're on pasture. We're testing the milk constantly so we have an idea of the components of proteins and fats, and therefore we can adjust our cheese making to those components. So, we work closely. 80% of our milk's from Albert's farm, directly his dairy, not the dairies that are in his collection or his group. Because how many dairies are in your group now?
There are 8.
Eight dairies, and they're amazing small farms. They're just fantastic people. But we get only from Albert's farm because we know he's got 75 or 80% Jersey in that herd and 20% Holstein. So we have an idea of what that milk is going to taste like from day to day.
What's a Jersey?
What's a Jersey is Jersey. They're the beautiful fawn-colored
Sweet
cows with the
face.
big eyes.
Yeah. I know one thing that we didn't learn from Ellen when we were trying to make quark. We never learned how to make it the way Bill liked it.
I thought he did like it at the end.
No.
We never got it right.
Yeah, Ellen would come and make cheese with Sue every day. Maybe 2 times a week. They'd make quark, and they'd make it, and they'd adjust the recipe every single time they make it. And then Ellen would take some home for Bill to taste to see if it was the way that he thought it should be, and he'd say, no, too salty, no, not sweet enough, or they never...
I think it was a 12-year-old memory, food memory that Bill was trying to match up.
Yeah.
We never
matched it up.
It was close.
Yeah.
But the other thing Ellen taught us, which is the most important thing, is, and what she was searching for, not only in saving land, but she said farmers should have more fun. It's a really hard life, and there's no connection with the people eating the food. And so she really made efforts to meet the public, and she sold Albert's potatoes at the farmers market for a couple years, and she got so energized by that. And so she said, if we save this land, then it might save the farms, and if we make cheese, the people on the farms might make more money and have a little more fun, just equally important. And I think that's really come to pass. I know it has for us.
Well, from what I understand, Mount Tam was really created specifically to showcase Albert's milk. I mean, just purely. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what it is that you love about the milk.
Peggy, please.
Yeah.
Oh, well, the flavor of milk, probably most milk that people are exposed to almost everywhere, every single day, it tastes exactly the same. But that's not really what milk tastes like, is it, Albert?
No.
Every day, it's a little bit different. And what we wanted to do was, when we started out making fresh cheese, it was just to, really showcase the beautiful milk we get from Albert. Well, from the Straus Creamery. And we decided that and people weren't, a lot of people didn't really like eating fromage blanc, and they do like cottage cheese, but so we thought, well, maybe there's another way that we can really bring this milk to market, and we decided that we'd make a cheese that was more like a Saint Andre, which is very accessible for people. Saint Andre is a French cheese, and it's a double cream, and it really talks about the milk. And so the idea was to make a triple creme cheese that was just about the milk. The cultures, you know, they're very light cultures that are added to the cheese, and you can keep it in your fridge for a couple of days. But the flavor of it, the whole intent was to represent the milk. And fortunately, people liked it when they tasted it, and they were inclined to buy it more than the fresh cheese. Didn't you think?
Yeah, I was thinking about the seasonal changes in the milk, and
Yes.
how you found out about the springtime when they're on pasture, and,
Yes.
and the differences you had to do in the making of the cheese.
Yeah, and Sue, you should probably talk about that.
Well, there's just that a lot of things are going on, as you know, in the spring. You know, there's so much pollen and flora and activity in the air, and the animals, when they're on pasture, you know, there's a very bright green taste in the milk, and all these things make it the most difficult time to make cheese, because you just have to adjust to all of that. And
Because the components are a little bit different, right,
Components are
Albert?
different. The pH is a little different.
Yeah.
The acidity. So.
yeah, so it's the most difficult time to make cheese, but it makes the most delicious cheese. And also with the sheep and goat milk, you see a dramatic difference, because they have their babies in the spring. You know, they really, those animals aren't year-round. They haven't figured out how to trick them into breeding year-round. So there's a more dramatic difference in those two.
Wow. And Albert, I wondered if you could talk or describe a little bit about why your milk is so good. I mean, not just the pasture, but how you treat the animals, you know, everything, the feed, everything that goes into it.
All the feeds have to be certified organic. We also we were the first creamery in North America that's verified all our feeds non-GMO. So we test and verify each load of feed. There's risk ingredients like corn, soybeans, alfalfa now that the FDA's approved alfalfas to be genetically modified. So we test and verify everything. But the feeds, we don't use, there's very little corn being used because it's too expensive and it's too hard, and 90% of it's genetically modified in the United States. So, but most of the forages are either pasture during the spring, usually from February through into June, and then you supplement with alfalfas and silages, silages are crops we grow that are like oats and beans and veg that you chop, and instead of making hay, which is sun cured, you put it into a pit and it goes through anaerobic fermentation and preserves it that way. And so we use that throughout the year, as well as you supplement to get enough. Milk production is very energy intense for the cows, so they need more energy than just the forages can give the hays and the silages and the pastures. So you supplement with some grains. So you have a seasonal differences for, you know, in the wintertime when the weather's cold, we actually see in our butter that the fats get a lot harder. It's harder to cut the butter. It's, in the spring it's softer and you have more yellow, it's more keratin. So there's it's a lot. There's some seasonal differences as well. But the feeds are all certified organic, all non-GMO. We don't try to push production. I think in an organic system, you want to keep the stress levels low as possible, because you're not using antibiotics or hormones. So you want to really take care of the animals. And then for our products, we minimally process as much as possible. We don't homogenize the milk, which is breaking up the fats to keep it evenly dispersed in the milk. We let the cream rise to the top. We don't ultra pasteurize, which is heating it up to 280 degrees. We go up to 170, which is a lower temperature.
And what effect does that have, that low temp pasteurizing versus the ultra?
Well, you get you kill off in the ultra-pasteurization, you actually killing off all the beneficial and non-beneficial bacteria and denature a lot of the proteins and enzymes. So we're trying to do as minimally as we can so that it's still, you still get a shelf life on the milk, but not where it sits on the shelf and lasts for 45 days.
You know, I have another thing that probably is an important component. Where that dairy is so beautiful. It's on the Tamales Bay, and on their house looks out on the Tamales Bay. And so the cows get to roam around in this beautiful land with this soft wind that comes off the bay, or the fog. And I mean, it is the most romantic setting, I'd say, for wouldn't you say, Sue?
I would, and I would say, you think, well, Albert's going on and on about what these animals are eating. Why is that such a big deal? When we were in Europe talking to the people in France and England and Italy, that's all they talk about.
Yeah.
When they're tasting a cheese, they want to know what is the breed of this animal. That'll give them an idea of the components of the milk. What are they eating? Are they on pasture? Is this a spring pasture, or was this cheese made in the winter? This is the only thing they talk about. They don't give much credit to the cheesemaker.
And
Well,
I want to say with that, when we bought this old hay barn in Point Reyes, and it had a dirt floor, and pigeons were roosting in there, and a slide door that didn't open very well, and we brought our friends to see it who are visiting from Bordeaux, and it hadn't been restored at all, and Sue and I were thinking, should we show them where we're going to make cheese? Because they might, they just might think this is a really bad idea. But we took them there, and we were standing out front, and so we said, well, what do you think? And they said, well, what do the cows eat?
Well,
It was
what the cows eat actually comes directly into the milk.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was in college, I made the samples for the dairy products judging team. So I added onion and garlic, because you can pick it up in the milk. You can pick up different flavors very easily. So if they get wild, they get wild weeds or something like that, it comes right into the milk. All these flavors come right through to the milk.
And there's a flavor that the cheese tasters call barnyard, and it's because the cows are breathing in. If the barn's not clean, they're breathing in, and that goes into the milk. So everything's important.
Well, I remember, I think it was you, Sue, years ago, said one of the things you loved about Albert's milk was it had this salty tang. And that's
on the pasture because the fog is bringing in just that light marine.
Yeah, just a little.
Yeah.
You don't have
a
to
little
salt
mist.
You don't have to salt the cheese. Huh?
Not too much.
Well, and also the Jersey component makes it really high in butter fat too, right? I mean,
That's
that
what I was
breed.
trying to get Sue to say, is that Jersey have less milk, but the fats and the proteins and the sugars are higher versus the Holsteins, which give a lot more milk, but less fat and less protein and sugar.
And it's interesting because you can't make the same cheese with every type of milk. The cheeses that are easiest to make from a Jersey milk or are the best made from Jersey milk aren't the same as the cheeses made from Holstein's milk. And it's hard to make a cheese that you're going to age for a really long time with a Jersey milk. That one you'd want less fat, or the way that you manipulate the milk is a lot different, but the components make a big difference in what you're going to do for cheese making.
Well, the drought, how is that affecting the composition of the milk now, and how are you guys dealing with that in the cheese making room?
So until a couple of days ago, the cows have been fed like they were all winter long, where they're supplemented with hays and silage. We're actually having to extend the amount of feed by reducing the amount of silage and increasing haze, which change the components a little bit on the milk as well. So all our dairies are actually having, I mean, with this last rain a couple weeks ago, we were actually have enough, most of them have enough water for the cows to drink for the next couple of months. But the pastures are very stunted, the crops are very stunted. So we're hoping that the dairies can get on pasture in the next probably 3 weeks. It's very slow growing right now. So what happens is the hays that are available, organic hays that are available, have gone up dramatically. They're running out of last year's crop, and now that the hay growers are not getting any water allocated in the California or Nevada, it's going to reduce the next year's crop by a quarter to a third, which means it's going to take a couple of years to just get caught up on the amount of forages or alfalfa hays that we need for our cows to eat. So it's having a long-term effect. We're hoping rains this week or tomorrow will have an effect, but the costs are pretty extensive for the farms. So we're going to be looking at pricing. We have to increase the prices of the farms, therefore increase the prices on our products as well.
Will the milk have any discernible difference because of what they're eating as a result of?
I think right now what's happening is we've delayed the pasture season, so there'll be pasture, but it'll be later, and depending on the weather, it might be a shorter season. For organic dairy or livestock, they have to be on pasture for at least 120 days, getting most of their nutritional needs from pasture. The Secretary of Agriculture, under the USDA Secretary of Agriculture, has given a 2-month variance for dairies in Marin Sonoma County. So we don't have to meet that standard for February and March, but for April, May we do.
Well, how does that affect cheese? You know, we might not be able to get milk. That's what we were thinking last month till we got the big rain.
Yeah.
It looks more promising now, but we also are heavy water users as cheesemakers. So we're concerned about, you know, if there's rationing or that sort of thing moving forward.
Well, the two cheeses we're going to be able to taste after this are Fromage Blanc and Wagon Wheel, which is kind of perfect because they represent the beginning and the end of your cheese-making journey that you describe in the book. It's the story of your cheeses. And it's great because along the way, the readers get to understand the differences between a fresh cheese and a soft ripened cheese and a hard cheese, because that was your natural progression. I wonder, Peggy, if you could describe a little bit about how you make Fromage Blanc and then Wagon Wheel.
Well, I'm going to have Sue talk about making Fromage Blanc. You know, I'm not a cheese maker, so I don't want to make a mistake. So why don't you, Sue?
You know, we say our book it teaches you how cheese is made, but not how to make cheese. Except we do have a Fromage Blanc recipe in there. And actually, I have to say, I played off of Margo, who did a whole section about Fromage Blanc in Sunset Magazine, and then put it in her book, The One Block Feast? One Block Feast.
Peggy and Sue taught us at Sunset how to make Fromage Blanc. It was just a great experience.
So that was a very easy thing for me to put onto the page because I had been so engrossed in her story. And it's the simplest cheese known to man. You warm the milk and put buttermilk cultures in, mesophilic cultures. At home, you can just put cultured buttermilk or a little bit of yogurt and let it sit overnight. We also put a drop of rennet in ours because it makes the curd more even. In the morning, it looks like yogurt. It's just or Jell-O, and you scoop it into a cheesecloth sack, let it drain, and then we do we cheat a little bit. We add some creme fraiche to it and then salt it. And it's just the most beautiful, delicate. You'll taste it. It's really my favorite cheese that we make. And then wagon wheel, we learned to make Mount Tam because we had a Dutch intern who was a dairy scientist. And he's the one that Peggy and I had the conversation about making the soft triple cream, delicious thing. And he said, well, let's make a little Gouda. Because he was from the Netherlands, and that's the only cheese he knew how to make. So our Mount Tam is made with a Gouda recipe. Oh. But we don't. That's a cooked cheese. It's a washed curd, so that washes a lot of the acidic taste out of it, and it's a pressed cheese.
You're talking about wagon wheel.
Now I'm talking about Mount Tam.
Now she's going to talk about wagon wheel.
Okay.
And then I'm going to go to wagon wheel because we made the Mount Tam and then we made several other cheeses with that formula. And but then the recession came, and our little cheeses are so hands-on. I mean, they just take a lot of labor and love to make. So we wanted to make a big, everyday utility cheese. And that's why we called it wagon wheel, because it's the one that works every time. It works for you.
Yeah, we actually were friends with Judy Rogers from Zuni, and we said, so what kind of cheese are you really looking for in your restaurant? And she said that she was looking for a cooking cheese that was similar to fresh Asiago. And so because she really wanted organic cheese. And so we started out with that recipe, but it didn't work. It really didn't work with the milk, and the cheesemakers gradually developed the wagon wheel into what it is today, and it's much different. The cheese is a washed rind cheese, which means that every so often you wash the entirety of the rind with a brine solution, which is just a saltwater solution. And then you turn it, and you wash it, and you turn it. And it has a good cooking point.
It does. It uses, we use some different cultures in that one that are long, they develop over a long period of time in the aging room. And they make stronger bonds so that it's a good melter. And it's not a washed curd. It is a pressed cheese, but it's not a washed curd, so you still get some nice acid in that kind of falls out over time. So you get much more complex flavors. It's not just that big hit of luscious cream. And it's a much cleaner finish, and really that's how that happened.
I love the wagon wheel. And it's been interesting to taste it as you keep progressing with the recipe. I remember you had a beta version out at a cheese tasting once.
We did.
Yeah. We had many betas because that was a fun thing. It would back to Alan Straus having fun at the farmer's market. We brought it only to the farmer's market, and it was batch 1, batch 2, batch 3, batch 4.
Yeah.
And the customers then say, I like that batch 36.
I know.
Oh, well, we're on 185 now. And I can't remember.
Can't you get a 36 again? Well, no.
So has wagon wheel come to rest?
It has.
So to speak?
But they're always working with it in the aging room. That's one thing, this collaborative type of community. And everybody wants to make things better. And it's how we used to cook too, where you'd share recipes and techniques, and with the craft beer, I see that happening, and with pickle making and all those kind of things. It seems with farming, with young farmers, or not young, but new farmers, it seems that it's the way that people are working now with artisanal cheeses and whatnot. Or
there are young people that really want to do it. We used to not have anybody come to our place looking for work. That no one had ever made cheese, and They didn't know what the work was like. But now we have people, they want to learn to make cheese. We have people that are moving from one cheesemaker to the next and picking up new skills. We had a guy behind the cheese counter, Matt Brown, who went to Uplands in Wisconsin and learned how to make cheese there. So he went from being a cheesemonger to a cheesemaker. Now he's come back and he's making cheese with Maureen at Cowgirl Creamery. And then we had another one that moved there, and she married the herdsman.
Yeah.
So she's staying, but it's there's this whole kind of nice community that's developing across the country.
It's a lovely aspect of the book too. You get to read about all these people in the cowgirls' lives. This giant friendly net of people all contributing to the same good ends. Well, now, Albert, I wondered if you could describe, can you talk about the treats that you're going to be, the treats that
treats.
everybody's going to get?
Well, we brought some ice cream today. We have vanilla, our regular vanilla ice cream, vanilla bean ice cream, excuse me. And we also brought we have a nutritional ice cream. It's a chocolate it's an ice cream that's actually, it can't be called ice cream because it's a frozen dessert, but it's mostly dairy products. It's 2-3 grams of fiber, 6 grams of protein, low glycemic, 25 vitamins and minerals. And so it was designed by, and it's all organic.
It's for people trying to gain weight.
No, trying to get
or lose
healthy.
weight. Stay healthy.
Stay healthy, I mean. Yeah.
Ice cream you can have for breakfast.
Yeah.
I brought that. I also want to talk about a little bit about, I think what we've done in Marin Sonoma County is created a model of farming that we're trying to work on. How can we revitalize the farming community? How can we get the next generation of farmers in succession farming? And so we're actually working on moving our facilities into like an organic processing hub where our creamery, Cowgirl, will be in, maybe eventually other organic producers, and be able to have a demonstration dairy and look at, so the public can see everything from the cow all the way through to the finished product and get that experience. So that's one thing we're looking at. We're also looking at how can we revitalize the farming communities in our area as well by looking at who are the people wanting to farm, how can they get the land, how can they get the housing, the finances, and the education and the help to do that.
So you'd be like an incubator.
Yeah,
Essentially,
kind of like that.
Yes.
And also to work on innovative ways to save energy, produce energy, wastewater treatment, those kind of things. They're issues that we're always thinking of and always trying to do better with.
And it's hard to do it as a standalone small company. If several are working together in the same place, you share infrastructure. And it saves everybody money and gets the cheese to market at a more affordable price.
I mean, for us on our farm, for the last 10 years, we've been producing our own electricity as well as most of our hot water from the waste of our cows and the waste of the creamery. We have a methane digester, and so we're keeping that greenhouse gas out of the atmosphere. We're producing energy and. Thank you. And in the same sense, we're driving electric vehicles that are powered by that. We're looking
Powered
at
by cows.
Yes. And then I've put in a kind of what we're trying to do is take all our wastewater and back to potable at the creamery, not human waste, but the creamery waste, to be able to really lower impact on the environment and the waste stream. So we're looking at all these technologies and trying to really move forward. We already reuse 6,000 gallons of it's called cow water. It's water that we condense our milk with reverse osmosis, and the water that comes out of the milk, we reuse that water for washing equipment. So that's 6,000 gallons a day. So we're always looking at how can we do things better, how can we do things more sustainable.
Oh, that is so wonderful. And you definitely touch on sustainability in the book also. I mean, this book has so much rich content on so many levels, but it also has great recipes, which we haven't talked about yet. And it's divided into the types of, well, there's a whole chapter on milk, using great milk, and then it takes you through the cheeses, categories of cheese, and gives you recipes for each kind of cheese. And I was wondering if you all could talk about a couple of your favorite recipes, or mention a couple of them.
Well, sure, I'd be happy to. One of the things that I really like in the book is a chapter called Ends and Bits. And that part is about, Sue and I both have refrigerators and little cheese drawers inside, and you always end up with little nubs of cheese, or you have a party and people always eat the best part, and you end up with the parts closer to the rind. So we tried to express good ways of using those little bits, and one of my favorite recipes, and none of the recipes we made up, and the idea behind it was to give techniques, or to also explain the way that different cheeses work with different types of cooking. So a semi-soft cheese works really well in this recipe, but it won't work so well in this recipe. So we divided it by cheese types, but the ends and bits is all of it. And my favorite part of that is a broth that we make just using rinds and the same kind of bouquet garni that you would use for making a stock. And you can make a really rich broth with the rinds from aged cheeses, because it has all that protein in it. And so we make a good little stock with that, and you can make some really good soups with it. That's one of my favorite recipes. And it's so simple, it makes... How about you, Sue?
Well, I'm just going to say two quick ones. One is we have this milk bar in San Francisco next to our shop called Sidekick, and we make a San Francisco egg cream, which with Rakuti chocolate sauce, Straus milk.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, how can that be bad? And then we also have my grandmother's cheddar wafer recipe in that cookbook. And we have a beautiful picture of it. So I was able to give the book to all my cousins, because we always call each other to say, do you remember that recipe? Right at Christmas. So now everyone has it.
Does everybody in your family think it's their mother's recipe?
No, it's grandmother.
Oh, okay, grandmother's, okay.
Yeah. So that's only got 3 ingredients: butter, flour, and really good cheddar, which is the secret ingredient. It has to be great butter and really good cheddar, which is why my grandmother's cookies were so delicious, and my mother and my aunts couldn't quite get it because they started buying cheese that was commodity. Cheese just got bad in the States in the 60s and 70s. It was all commodity, and the biggest goal was to make it cheap. So my memory of my grandmother's cookies was more like what we're making today.
All comes around.
Yeah.
Well, we'd love to open it up to you guys for questions. If I think there are microphones that are passing around, Jordan. What is the system for questions?
I have a microphone on this side, and Brett has one on that side. If you have a question, raise your hand, and we'll alternate sides. So first question will be back here.
Hello. Hi, I'm Francesca.
Hi, Francesca.
So my question was, I was wondering if you could explain the small differences between Mount Tam and Red Hawk, and those I feel like are two polarizing cheeses. There are Mount Tam followers and Red Hawk followers, and there are obvious differences, but in the preparation, what they are.
So Mount Tam is that triple creme. It's a fluffy, bloomy mold cheese. It has the same rind as a Camembert style cheese. And the Red Hawk is also a triple creme cheese, but that one came about a little bit as an accident. And we were making Mount Tams, and were there mites, Sue, that hopped over?
Cheese mites, which are
So-
absolutely harmless.
And I won't
In
get
the aging room.
Yeah, I won't get into the person that put a Stilton in the aging room where the mites jumped from the Stilton onto the Mount Tam. But, you know, Sue saw it, and she thought, by God, I'm not going to waste these cheeses. And she thought, well, I think I can just wash it, and we'll get the mites off of it, and then the mold grows back. As soon as it's exposed to air, that it will start growing again. And so she said, okay, well, I'm going to wash these. And she put them in a little container and went back and came back, and they were still growing a little bit, and washed them again. Not very happy about it. And then kept it in a container that was covered. And what happened was the bacteria that is naturally floating around in the atmosphere out in Point Reyes actually attached itself to the rind of the cheese. And it turned the cheese into a totally different cheese. It turned it into what we call a washed rind cheese, because Sue was washing with the brine solution. And it became orange. I don't know if any of you have seen Red Hawk, but if you think of, and I don't have an example, I'm sorry I didn't bring one, but if you think of Mount Tam being made, and then you think of Red Hawk, and they're made exactly the same way, with the exception of how you finish it, because you finish the Red Hawk by washing it every so often and turning. They're totally different cheeses, but the recipe is exactly the same. And it's kind of a testament to the aging of cheese and how you can manipulate the flavors that will come out by the way that you manipulate with humidity and temperature and treatment.
Yeah, so that Red Hawk is truly a product of the terroir of our place. And we had the French cheesemaker who makes reblochon come out to our place and say, there's no way you can make a triple cream washed rind cheese. It cannot be done. And he went and through the whole process with us. And he said in French, like,
Mon Dieu.
son of a gun or something. You did it. You did it.
And actually now, every year there's something in San Francisco called the Fancy Food Show that happens in January.
Yeah.
And so cheesemakers from all over the world come. Well, lots of people come, but lots of cheesemakers come. And so almost every year we have, it's not really a battle of the bands, but there's the French contingent, and they'll bring their Apois and their Camembert and their Reblochon, and then we have the American contingent, and everybody goes around, and the French are always, like, they love it though, and they are so happy to have this little gathering, because it is where they're showing us their washed rind cheeses or their bloomy mold cheeses, and we're showing them ours. And it's so great to see that kind of recognition, in a sense, I'd say, wouldn't you, Sue?
Well, and as Margo started the conversation, they really are impressed that Americans can make good cheese.
Yeah.
It's very new development in our cuisine.
Well, and they must be excited to see that, it's possible to break the rules, too,
Yes.
that we don't have to abide by these very stringent ways of making cheese, and you can come up with these happy accidents.
They're jealous. They are really jealous because, there it's so regional, and the region really dictates what kind of cheese you make. And they don't have too many people that are renegades, and so they come here. But I think it's getting to be more and more where they are breaking tradition a little bit.
Mon Dieu.
But they, yeah,
Mon
mon
Dieu.
Dieu.
Wow.
Right.
Any other
On
questions?
your left.
On the left?
What, if any, challenges did you have bringing your cheeses and your milk to market, to the retail? And you don't have that distribution system that Safeway to plug into. So could you tell us about that?
Cheese or milk?
It is a huge, we could both speak to that, but it's a huge issue, and that's why we, when we started, I said to Peggy, I'll do any part of this business, but I don't want a farm and I don't want a fleet of trucks. I really don't, and we have a fleet of trucks right now.
Well,
And
we
we
have
are
minivans.
we are
Yeah.
distributors. We're distributors to 700 accounts in the Bay Area, and we're not. We don't have an 18-wheeler. They're very small refrigerated trucks, and we're bringing a box of cheese this big with 6 different cheeses. We are providing that service, and it's one of the core missions of our company. Because we could not find a distributor
Well,
to.
and in that, what we're able to do is when new cheesemakers come on, we try and work with them from the beginning to talk about packaging and cases and things like that. We are not big distributors, but we can help small people get their cheese, small producers, not small people, get their cheese to market so that their businesses can grow. And then,
And milk's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's in the
I'm-
dairy department,
I'm in the dairy department.
It's a different
And-
buyer.
And the frozen department.
and the
Yeah.
frozen, yeah.
So it's, in the beginning, actually, we decided not to do distribution because it was enough to get the farm organic, get the creamery going and keep that business going. So we actually go through distributors. We mostly are in natural and organic retailers, and we've expanded into, you and my mother worked on restaurants. Chez Panisse came to us in the very beginning looking for French butter, so, to make it like in France. And so we've been in Chez Panisse for 20 years now. So, but the chains, actually in the beginning, when you mentioned Safeway, they actually had us in a lot of Safeways because the stores could each make their own decisions, and we were quite widely distributed in Safeway with glass bottle milk. And then when it became corporate, they kicked us out of all of them. Now we're actually getting back into some of them again, but it's
The milk is really hard because it's so heavy and bulky.
It's also a reusable bottles.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
get 4 to 6 uses out of a bottle. We get over 80% return rate. So most of those grocery chains don't want to handle glass. They don't want to have to deal with it. So it's changing the whole mentality that has taken some retailers are really ready for change, and other ones resist it no matter what.
but I want to say one thing. When a really important part of our business and the strategy of our business in introducing products was working with farmers markets. And that really gave us immediate feedback, and it also enabled us to help educate about where our products came from and different views on that. And this area is so supportive of good food and good food producers. And I don't know if you all know how lucky you are to live in this area.
And how lucky we are.
And how lucky we are, but I just think
We need each other.
but I think of I'm talking about the environment and what it allows us to do here and what it brings to market. We're so lucky.
I was on the front lines with Albert's Milk because I ran the farmers market for Straus for the first couple of years. And people got mad, said, "What do you mean it's organic? All milk is organic." And they would have shooting matches, and Albert's brother, Michael, would sometimes be with me, and he'd start in with them. I said, Michael, just step back. Calm down, it's going to be okay. But yeah, there was a huge learning curve in that certified organic.
Yeah.
The farms as well. I
Yeah.
mean, dairy farmers all thought they were organic,
Yeah.
but they didn't look into their practices.
It's just a healthier way to farm. It's just, you're called to track everything that's going into the land and the animals, and it's just much more conscious.
We have time for 3 more questions. Next question on your left.
Hi, you made the most delicious cottage cheese, and much to my utter disappointment, I can't find it on the shelves anymore.
Don't start with that.
I'd like to know. I'm with her on this. I'd like to know why you stopped production of the cottage cheese, and can I beg and plead with you to please bring it back?
Me too.
Well, I'll answer the last part of that. And as far as bringing it back, and hopefully when we move into a new facility with Albert, then we'll have this. What Sue's dream is to have a fresh cheese, a whole room that's just dedicated to fresh cheese. And the first thing that's coming back is cottage cheese. So,
But I tell you, it's all about water. It's about water. We are working in Point Reyes on a septic system. The cottage cheese takes 2 days to make, so it monopolizes our room for 2 days, and it also takes twice as much water as any other cheese. So we really had to stop. We bought the property next to ours to expand our septic system. We put a water reuse system in. That's still not enough. So really it's about this new facility that we're building, and I can't wait. It's my absolute favorite cheese. I love cottage cheese, and we're gonna bring it back.
yeah.
What is the projected date for?
We're going to look at a place tomorrow.
It's coming soon. Coming soon, right, Albert?
Doing our best.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Next.
Hi. I have a question about homemaking cheese. You talked a little bit about the fromage blanc, and I'm wondering for the home enthusiasts, what's some other good entry-level cheeses, and what's rennet, and where can we get it?
Yeah.
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, you better answer that.
Cheesemaking.com.
Yeah.
Cheesemaking.com will sell you little packets of things.
What kind of rennet,
Yeah.
though? What's a rennet?
They have
Yeah.
animal rennet, traditional rennet, and microbial, which is what we use, and that's a vegetarian rennet. And when you see a cheese that says rennet list, it's false advertising, because you got to have something. But the Camembert styles are made with a fresh curd, and they're the ones that are best for home cheese making. And you could really spend a couple of years perfecting that before you move to an aged cheese, because then it gets complicated. You have to have a place to age it, and you have to.
Yeah, I would go with the fresh cheeses.
Yeah.
Yeah, like yogurts and fromage blanc, and you can make a really good yogurt cheese. Ricotta is a good cheese to make, and
Yeah.
oh yeah,
You
Okay.
have to make it with fresh milk. That's the whole key. And so you really have to look at the label in the grocery store, and that's been pasteurized already. So, the best cheese is, we get our cheese raw from the farm, and we pasteurize it.
Milk raw.
We get
I'm
the
sorry,
milk.
our milk raw from the farm, pasteurize it at a low temperature, as Albert was describing. It's a vat, so it's, you don't want to heat it up too fast. You got to be very gentle with it. You don't want to pump it or splash it around. Gentle.
Well, there are a couple of things too. I would say there's sometimes a cheese making class at Indian Springs?
College of
No, I mean
Marin.
Valley.
We
College
have
of Marin.
a cheese
Yeah.
Indian Valley,
certification.
right?
Indian Valley, I always call it Indian Springs.
And the Cheese School of San
And the
Francisco.
Cheese School of San Francisco is a good place to look for more educational information on that.
And the final question up here on your left.
Hi, actually a quick comment and a question. First of all, I want to thank you for explaining the difference between pasteurized and ultra-pasteurized, because I could never understand why an organic milk could stay on the shelf for 45 or 50 days. So thank you. And also, I just wanted to ask all of you, as your business grows and as demand grows, how do you stay so personally connected to it and maintain the quality of the processes and systems and really mission and philosophy of your business?
I'm there every day. I started out the farm. I go to the creamery. I go to the offices. I'm actually very involved in the day-to-day operation, even though I have 120 people now working at the creamery. It's something that quality. I love making products. I love, making sure the quality of the products are the highest they can be. So I'm very involved, and I love the challenges. So I always look at how can we make things better, how can we innovate and become more sustainable.
And Sue and I both are there every day as well, and we have different areas that we focus on, but it's a very collaborative kind of business with the people that we work with and how we move forward. I think we also are really involved with our communities, all of us, and it's what we love. I love the cheese business. I know Sue loves the cheese business, and we especially like the people that we get to work with, who are involved with that. So it's kind of easy.
Yeah, there's a the scale issue, I think, is really critical, and I think what you're hinting at is we're both companies are growing. So how do you stay artisan, or how do you have the small business feeling and authenticity that we've had over the years? And there is a chapter in the book called "How Big Is Your Vat?" And this is a question that we, as cheesemakers, when we get together, how big is your vat? Oh, you got a 200-gallon vat, and which is kind of like the standard size for an artisan cheesemaker, depending on what you're making. But it's something that's in our conscious all the time, and we're kind of maxed out on how much Mount Tam we can make. We allocate it to accounts, and we're maxed out on our Red Hawk. So it might be enough, how much is enough? Maybe it's enough. But the other side of our business is that we work with over 60 cheesemakers that are also working in small vats, and we'll add another 70 or 50. We don't have to make all the cheese ourselves.
Yeah. But also there's a limit to what we can make, because we put limits on how we operate. And for instance, we work with Albert's milk from his farm, so.
There's a limit.
Yeah, there's a limit. And I will say that we've worked together for a while, and we've
17 years.
And we've never had a written contract. It's
And it's working. Huh? And it's working.
Yeah,
It's
and it
working
works
'cause
well. Yeah.
we do have breakfast about once a week together.
Yeah.
That really works.
We try.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all very much for coming. And Albert and Peggy and Sue will be out with their fine foods to
Cheese
chat
and
more.
books in the lobby.
We're supposed to go.